It was the end of the 6th century. In the aftermath of the Gupta Empire, King Harsha ruled from Kannauj in North India. Besides his fame as a fine administrator, he was known as a poet and playwright. His dramas on Buddhist ethics are till today performed as operas in Japan. In the south of India, the Pallavas, rulers of present-day Andhra Pradesh, were spreading their control over much of Tamil Nadu. They established the first large empire in the region. An empire whose fame spread far and beyond India to Southeast Asia and China. King Mahendravarman I, who ruled from 590 to 630 AD, expanded his rule southwards to the river Kaveri. In ancient India, the focus of rulers was never limited to administration and military might. The conquest of the mind and the search for truth played a vital role in their lives. Mahendravarman was a poet, an accomplished musician, and the author of at least 2 well-known plays which were satires on contemporary life.
Pallavas were great masters, not only the artists, but the kings themselves were great masters. They were lovers of art. Kala Samudraha is the title, ocean of art is the title of the king. Rajasimha was responsible for creating the Mamallapuram monuments. Inspired by these great kings, emperors, the artists also vied with each other to bring out the best in them.
The earliest surviving monument of King Mahendravarman's period is a simple rock-cut cave at Mandagapattu, not very far from Villupuram. An inscription proclaims that he had made a home for Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva without the use of bricks, timber, metal and mortar. Though rock-cut caves had been excavated on a vast scale in the Deccan over the past 800 years, it appears that these were rare in South India. This also explains the lack of extant remains. The cave at Mandagapattu has large Dwarapalas, or door guardians, which now become characteristic of South Indian temples. Halfway up the hill in the centre of present-day Tiruchirappalli city is another more elaborate cave of this period. The panel of the Gangadhara Shiva is very finely made and anticipates the elegance of later Pallava works. A marvellous chapter of Indian art opened with the reign of Mahendravarman's successor, Narasimhavarman, also known as Mamalla, the great warrior. He expanded the port of Mamallapuram, or Great Hill, and named it Mamallapuram, or City of Mamalla. Massive boulders were transformed into a world of divine and earthly beings. Caves with exquisite sculpted panels were hewn out of the hills. Great temples were cut out of rocks, displaying the shapes of contemporaneous structures made of materials such as wood. These are the earliest records of the development of the styles of temples in South India. King Narasimhavarman II, also known as Rajasimha, ruled in the first quarter of the 8th century. He made the first structural temple in stone in Tamil Nadu on the shores of the port town of Mamallapuram. Mamallapuram has been shown in detail in the previous film of this series. 70 kilometers away is the city of Kanchipuram, a seat of learning in South India since ancient times. It was the Pallava capital from the 4th to the 9th centuries. The Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang visited Kanchipuram in the 7th century and described it as a glorious city. There was considerable trade with Southeast Asia, China and Rome since early times. Great Buddhist teachers including Buddha Ghosha lived here in the 6th century. King Rajasimha made a glorious temple here for his personal worship. A foundation inscription states that he erected this extensive and wondrous house of Shiva to reflect his own glory and the laughter of the Lord. The temple is dedicated to Shiva Gangadhara, the bearer of the river Ganga.
We had clear-cut ideas that temples and sculptures and idols are external symbols that inspire you to reach a higher state of living. But what is required is that is drawn into your mind, and that brings out the whole approach to temple in ancient times.
The temple's foundation inscription likens the ruler's own descent from King Parameshwara with that of the birth of Skanda from Lord Shiva. The deity in the temple, and by implication the temple itself, was named Rajasimha Pallaveshwara, or the Lord of Rajasimha Pallava. This practice was to become popular in all South Indian temples. The temple also has the name Kailashanatha, or Shiva, the Lord of Mount Kailasha. Just inside the main entrance on the east is a smaller shrine built by the king's son, Mahendravarman III. Unlike the main shrine, this has a barrel-shaped roof. There is a row of smaller shrines in front of the temple. Inscriptions show that at least 2 of them were made by queens. A mandapa with a Nandi inside stands at a considerable distance from the temple. The entire complex of this royal temple is grand and lavishly sculpted. A relief seen everywhere is the rampant lion, a royal symbol of the Pallavas. The main shrine is made of sandstone, except for the lowest 2 tiers, which are made of granite for additional strength. As the worshipper moves on the outer ambulatory path, shrines are made here. These prepare him and begin the journey, the transport of delight, away from the noise and anxieties of the material world.
But one of the lovely things about temple architecture, temple sculpture, is that the gods are often having a sort of leisurely moment. And that's when you realize just how gentle and graceful the gods can be, because in these sculptures they're shown just quietly sitting, enjoying the company of their wife, or looking graciously down at the viewers below. There are certainly wonderful images of the big cathartic moment when the demon is killed, but in much temple sculpture, it's the quiet, gentle, and very approachable aspect of the god that's emphasized.
The shrines made in the outer walls of the sanctum house large images of Shiva. These are among the most impressive and elegant ever made. On either side of the entrance to the sanctum are images of Shiva's cosmic dance, the Tandava. This was a favorite theme with Rajasimha. The dynamism of the dance is expressed in the many arms of Shiva, which move around him. The victory of the truth over ignorance is depicted in the image of Durga. The exquisitely made figure personifies the sublime grace, which is the final aim of the devotee. Besides the Shivalinga, the shrines of the temple have the image of the Soma Skanda. In Rajasimha's time, this icon was constantly seen in the sanctum sanctorum of temples. The Soma Skanda shows Shiva with Parvati, Azuma, and their son Skanda or Kartikeya. The Lord and his spouse are presented as universal parents. A parallel is drawn between the divine family and that of the king. The foundation inscription speaks glowingly of the Pallava rulers. One even refers to the birth of Rajasimha, son of King Parameshvara, and likens it to the birth of Kumara or Kartikeya, the son of Shiva. From the 2nd century BC onwards, the art of India was sponsored by the people. Inscriptions everywhere inform us that it was fishermen, farmers, bankers, merchants, housewives, monks and nuns who paid for the making of all the great sculptures at ancient stupa sites. The king considered it his duty to give generous grants for the maintenance of all religious establishments, including those of faiths other than his own. In the 7th and 8th centuries, a clear shift takes place. Now the grandeur of the king is being expressed through the art. The Pallava reliefs at Mamallapuram also have portraits of King Parameshvara and Rajasimha. The Kushana rulers, who hailed from the tribes of Central Asia, had made images of themselves in royal shrines in the 1st century. This was a clear departure from Indic norms of art, in which ephemeral personalities were not depicted. After that period, the Pallava images are the earliest surviving royal portraits in India. The sculpted figures breathe with the inspired workmanship of the artist. A shrine portrays Shiva as the enchanting mendicant. Around him are the enamored wives of rishis. We see Shiva as Tripurantaka when he destroys the forts of the demons. This was an icon which was to become very popular with the Cholas, who succeeded the Pallavas in this region. The mandapa or hall of the temple was originally a detached structure and was later connected by a 16th century construction. The enclosing wall of the temple complex has a series of small cells which face east or west. The outer niches have sculpted images of deities. Deep within the inner niches are paintings of Lord Shiva in his various forms. These are valuable as they are among the very few remains of the beautiful paintings of Pallava times. Parvati looks towards Lord Shiva as he performs his cosmic dance. It is a fine philosophic concept. The dance cannot be without her as the eternal witness. Fragments of paint on the sculptures reveal that they would once have all been covered with a layer of plaster and painted. The sculptures of the Kailashnath temple were all covered with recent plaster under which their beauty was hidden. The removal of the plaster has revealed the exquisite beauty of the art. There is a panel of Ganas, only 30 inches in height, which runs along the base of the temple. It displays the high quality of carving everywhere in the temple. Ganas are an important motif in Shiva temples, and they depict the joyous spirit of the worship of the Lord.
The dwarfs that are represented in temples or philosophically or theologically are the souls of the individuals who were greatly devoted to their Lord, and they have come nearer to God, and they have achieved the state where they will remain always in the company of the God, and they are happy, dancing, singing, because they have reached the abode of God and they are constantly in the presence of the God.
This gorgeously sculpted temple presents the essential features of the style of South Indian temples which were to follow. The early Western Chalukyan king Vikramaditya II, who ruled in the second quarter of the 8th century, vowed to destroy the city of Kanchipuram. This was to avenge the earlier Pallava attack on their capital of Vatapi. However, when he captured Kanchipuram, his inscription states that he was so overwhelmed by the beauty of this temple that he left it untouched. It is possible that the styles of the later Chalukyan monuments, such as the Virupaksha temple at Pattadakkal, were inspired by this great temple. The Vaikunt Perumal temple, dedicated to Vishnu, was made at Kanchipuram in the second half of the 8th century by Nandivarman II. The Vimana or tower is larger than that of the Kailashnath temple. The enclosure wall of the temple has on its inside a pillared gallery with sculpted reliefs. Some of these have labels and depict the history and glory of the Pallavas, the first such account in Indian art. The Talagirishvara temple at Panimalai, made out of granite, is another fine construction of the Pallava period. It has the remains of an exquisite painting of Parvati. The Pandyas ruled from the southern part of Tamil Nadu with their capital at Madurai. From the 6th century onwards, they too had become a major force in South India. The unfinished rock-cut Vattuvan Kovil temple at Kalugumalai is one of the most wondrous monuments of South India. In the 8th century, a vast section of a rocky hillock was carved into a Shiva temple. The many figures carved on the tiers of the roof are graceful and in naturalistic poses. Different aspects of Shiva are made in easy postures, looking out to the cardinal directions. A host of other graceful beings also occupy the spaces of the Vimana. The sculpted lines are flowing, and they appear like real people inhabiting the roof of the temple. Ganas are seen here in various poses of delightful mischief. The sculptor's genius lies in the ability to infuse the deities and their attendants with a sense of the wonder of life and all of creation. Many figures are seen only from the hips upwards, which conveys the impression that they lean out from the upper sections of a building. This convention was seen also in the Arjuna Ratha at Mamallapuram. Stylistically, the sculpture has similarities to the contemporaneous Pallava idiom. Further up the hill, at Panimalai, are a number of Jaina reliefs carved on the rock face. The epigraphs here mention that these were donated both by the common people and high-ranking officials of this region. The reliefs have been dated to the end of the 8th century. These sculptures are significant because they display the pan-Indian spread of motifs that are seen in the art of all faiths. Rearing leogryphs are seen flanking the seated figures of the Jinnas here in the southernmost part of India. These are also found in the later Buddhist monasteries far north in the Trans-Himalayan deserts. The grand and dignified Pandyan style is seen also in the figures of Vishnu and his Vahana Garud. The Pallava and Pandya period is one of the grandest in Indian sculpture. Active patronage was extended for the first time in this period by great kings. The artists created an enchanted world with figures both divine and of the earthly realm. Deities, common folk and animals were made, infused with the grace that unites all of creation.